Welcome to the Michael Blum Show, where we talk about things you don't want to talk about. We talk about sex. We talk about politics. We talk spirituality and substance abuse. Join us by calling 800-699-0980. Think, speak, and be heard. Here now is Michael Blum. Tonight we're doing our live recording from beautiful Boca Raton. It's gorgeous out. There's not a cloud in the ceiling, and we have a really good guest coming up with us. We're going to be talking about men tonight. If you follow the show at all, you know that from time to time we do these things, and we talk about men's issues, because I think that they're kind of, today's society, lost. And people have all sorts of questions that they want answered. If you're one of those kind of folks that wants your questions answered, we do have a number you can give us a call in. Number here tonight is 800-699-0980. Again, you can call me up, Dr. Mike, at 800-699-0980. You know, I think that in today's society, it's kind of rough because, particularly for men, and I'm going to say even particularly for white men, even more difficult, because society has come up with toxic masculinity, and they push that point in universities. You can actually go ahead and do seminars on that. And to me, the whole thing is kind of moronic and nonsensical, because the things that people think make men toxic are the same things that make men great. It's not a matter of whether you're toxic or not. It's a matter of whether you're a good person or not. That's where it all comes from. If you're a terrible person and you're a guy, you're going to act like a terrible guy. And aggression is going to be part of it. And, unfaithfulness is going to become part of it. And all those things become part of it. You're not going to make a man better by making him more feminine. You got to make a man better by making him a better man. And I really think that's really what it's about. And it bothers me when I say, when I see people getting degrees in things like men in society and study. I got to tell you, folks, if you're out there, you're going to school right now, if your major course of action ends with the word study, you're screwed in life. You're screwed. You might as well get used to putting in light bulbs, because no one cares that you got your degree in gender fluidity or lesbian dance or any of these other crazy things. It just gets very, very rowdy. You have to go ahead and kind of move it up into reality. And I have someone on the phone, not on the phone, actually someone we're going to be doing video with tonight, who's going to absolutely move it up and into reality with us tonight. I have the founding father of Real Men Connect. I have Dr. Joe Martin with us. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing fine, Michael. You had me cracking up, man. This is good. I'm already laughing. I haven't even started the interview yet.
Well, that's you got to take the good with the good. That's
That's right, man.
That's how it goes. So, was I particularly off base in what I just said in my intro?
No, I think that you're headed in the right direction, man. I love it. I love it. And I love talking about men's issues with other men.
Well, that's what it's about. So, folks, again, feel free to join us, 800-699-0980. Again, it's 800-699-0980. You come from a very eclectic past. I use the word eclectic because it's such a nice word to use than actually sometimes groveling into the actual truth of it all. I started working. When I started working, I was a musician. That's all I did. And then I became a school teacher. I taught neurologically impaired and emotionally disturbed people. And then I became a dentist. And now I'm semi-retired with that. And I pretty much do what I'd like, which is nice to be in that kind of position. But when I describe myself to people, if I really, really like them, I tell them that I'm eclectic. If I don't want to have much to do with them, I tell them I'm just skitzed. So I, have different things, and I can't focus at all. Now you come from. Tell me about your background. I want people to know really where it is that you came from.
Well, I came from not too far from where you are in Boca Raton. I'm from Miami, Florida, specifically. But when you tell somebody you're from Miami, Florida, it could be anywhere in Miami. But I tell them specifically, I grew up and I was born and raised in a place called Liberty City. in Miami, and it's an inner city ghetto in Miami that a lot of listeners are either familiar with. If they're older, they're familiar with Liberty City. If they've ever heard of Two Live Crew, the rap group,
Uh-huh.
and if they're a millennial, they know about Liberty City based on the video game, the infamous video game Grand Theft Auto, which one of the their I guess additions was based off that neighborhood. And I always tell kids when I'm talking to them, I say, if they do a video game based in your neighborhood, that's not a good thing. That's not a compliment. And so that's where I'm from. That's where I was born and raised. I lived there until I graduated from high school.
Now, I'm curious if it's, I know a couple of other people from that area, believe it or not, that I've met that have seemed to, and I hate to use the term, but maybe it's the wrong term, you correct me, but kind of like get out of there. It's almost like there's a prison there that you need to get out of. And
No, I think that's an accurate depiction of Liberty City. I remember telling one of my friends when I was in high school that I told him, I said, take a good look at me because I'm never coming back. And he said, what you mean you're never coming back? I said, I may come back to visit, but I'm never going to live in this place. I said, I can't stand this place. And you're right. But a lot of people could say that about the cities they grew up in because they want to get out because it's boring. There's not a lot to do. Well, when you want to get out of Liberty City, it's not because it's boring. It's because it's dangerous. And you feel that if you get out, you've actually survived it. Because by the time I reached the age of 16, I had lost 6 of my friends. 6 of my friends had died, and usually to some type of violence. And so I remember praying a lot, saying, God, just let me make it to my 18th birthday. And I don't know what was magical about the age 18, but I just knew most of my friends wasn't making it to that age. So you're absolutely right. I got to get out of here. And I just survived Liberty City just to make it out.
how did you manage to do it? What was like the motivation for you to get out of there?
Desperation more than anything.
You reached the
People look
bottom?
at what I've, yeah, well, it's not even reaching the bottom. It's more so that either I'm going to get out of here or I'm going to die here, period. Either I'm going to end up going to jail, being shot or killed, or I'm going to make it out. And I get asked a lot of times the question, how'd you get out of there? I said, I still don't know, but I attribute it to basically my family, my faith, and some angels there I call angels who were sprinkled along the way who helped me get out of there. And when I say help me get out of there, they had no idea that I was suicidal from 12 to 16 years old. And so those angels would appear at the right moment to say the right thing, to do the right thing, to kind of keep me going until I was able to get out. So it's a pure desperation.
Your angels, were they something that you saw? Is it something that came to you? Were they visions? Was it something you heard?
No, these are teachers. I'm talking real people you can touch. These were teachers, man.
I'm in the
No,
spiritual realm already. Okay.
yeah.
Uh,
Oh no, that's the faith part. But no, the reality was my sister was one of those angels. We were so poor that she used to steal food from her fast food job just so we could eat. And when I say my sister was an angel, I couldn't stand my sister growing up because she was a girl and she was a
mhm.
year younger than me. And she was so close to age that she always thought she was the oldest and act like she was the oldest. But even though we would go at each other a lot, we always protected one another. But my sister, I don't know how she would know, but I guess she just knew that I wasn't eating, because my mom wasn't cooking and we didn't have
Sure.
food. And my sister would steal food from her job, and she would give me the food and leave it out for me. Michael, just leave it out like I was a pet. And because she didn't want to embarrass me by giving it to me.
Sure.
And I would eat that food as if I was like a hostage, man. And so, and now you're talking about all these years later, now over gone close to 40 years later, my sister, she never brings it up. She never mentions it. And she's now a doctor now, but she never brings up like, man, when I used to feed you when you were starving. And we have a very, very close bond because she saw me at my worst and she was always there for me. So even though she was my sister, she was an angel that I believe God put in my life, because I don't know if I would have made it without her. But I had teachers like that. It was a guy who worked at a recreational park in our neighborhood. I consider him an angel, Coach Holcomb. And they didn't know they were angels, but they didn't
Hmm.
realize they gave me inspiration and drive to keep going, just to make it to the next week, to make it to the next month, to get through the next year.
Were there men in your house? Would you have a father figure or a father or someone in the
No,
house?
no.
No.
And to kind of give you some context, Michael, and by the time I reached the age of 18, I only knew one family who had a father in the home.
Amazing.
One. And now let me give you some context for Liberty City. You're talking about thousands of people live in Liberty City, 5 high schools and 2 malls. I didn't meet a white child till I was 12. And so, but I only knew one family that had a dad in the home, and that family was dysfunctional too because the mom was a numbers runner, and the dad bootlegged videos out of his trunk. And so that was my vision of marriage. So I saw a lot of males in my community, a lot of males in my neighborhood, but very few men, if any men in my neighborhood. Now, it doesn't mean there weren't men in my life, but the ones who were in my life either abandoned me, abused me, neglected me, rejected me. When you mentioned in the intro about that toxic, I don't call it toxic. They were just like you said, bad men. They were men who they didn't know how to be men.
Yeah,
So
that's it.
I didn't call it toxic. So but that was most of the men in our community, and I use the term men loosely because I tell groups now when I speak to men's conferences that you're a male by birth, but you're a man by choice. You got to make some choices to step into manhood. That's not something that happens automatically.
Sure, it is, and it is a choice you need to make. Uh, we should talk about that a bit. Um, I'm just amazed. So basically, you had no food, no men in the house. Was there drugs also around? I mean, were you involved with drugs for a while? It would seem like be part of the
I
thing.
wasn't involved in drugs, but I was surrounded by drugs. I had family members who were drug dealers. Some of my best friends were drug dealers, and I was always exposed to it. Now, I can tell you, I didn't sell drugs. I didn't do drugs, at least willingly. That's a whole nother story. But when I joke, and I'm not being funny when I joke, but the kids laugh at it, but I'm serious. I tell them that I say I knew enough about drugs that I know how to slice and dice and mix it and sell it if I wanted to. But I thought it was normal to know that. And I think the most extreme instance in me not, and I'm thinking this is normal, that I was over a friend's house and in his back room is very, very cold. And I mean, it was freezing. And you got to understand in Liberty City, most people didn't have air conditioning. And so you imagine living in Miami in the humidity, no air conditioning, you don't have
It
fans.
seems impossible. Seems
Yeah.
impossible.
But yeah, now it seems like, how do we live like that? But he was like one of the few people in our neighborhood who had air conditioning. I'm like, it is freezing cold. It was colder than a kindergarten room, a classroom. And the reason why it was so cold, because that's where he stashed his cocaine. And he had so much cocaine. I'm talking about trash bags filled with it. And of course, I'm thinking, wow, that's a lot of cocaine, not realizing the amount of cocaine that man had in that home. It could have been raided. We could all been killed for that amount of drugs. And so I was around it, and it was normal to me to see people shooting up and that kind of stuff. But no, by the grace of God, I never got involved in it, and was tempted to sell it based on my friends trying to push me into doing it because we needed money. But I just resisted, and I refused to fall to that temptation.
How much of the victim mentality went into either you or people that you knew? Because it would seem that in a situation that you describe, with drugs around, friends dying, no food, no real guy in the house, it would be really easy to go, I'm just a victim of society. I'm going to blame whatever, the white man, the black man, the green man, whatever it is. It doesn't make much of a difference. But as long as you're a victim, you seem to have resolved yourself of all of these issues because you no longer need to take responsibility, which to me would be the first pillar of being a guy, a man.
Right. And so your question is what? How did I navigate that, or how did I feel about that? What?
Yeah. What did you feel that you were a victim? Did you feel that how did you navigate if you did?
It was divine intervention. Remember I told you I didn't meet a white child till I was 12. The reason I didn't meet a white child till I was 12 because we had so many schools within our community. They were integrating the schools at the time, and they sent us to a middle school, Thomas Jefferson Middle School, which was, it seemed like it was forever, far, far away, but it was only like a 15, 20-minute drive. But in our neighborhood, you didn't have to go far. We didn't have a car. So it was when I was 12 years old. And so I've been blessed that I've been able to avoid that because of my mother. When I went to that school, I was shocked because I was excited about seeing white kids for the first time. But I was shocked because I knew we didn't have a lot, but I didn't know we were actually poor because I was always around poor people all the time. So no one had anything, unless you were a criminal, So, but when I got to Thomas Jefferson Middle School, I saw there were black kids, white kids, Jewish kids, Latino kids, Italian kids, all had more than what we had, which kind of made me confused because I thought, okay, so this can't be just a black condition if black kids have more than I have going to this white school. So of course I go home and I have questions for my mom. Now I got to tell you, I was in tears because I started hearing kids talk about stuff that they had, like they had their own room with a door on it and everything. And I'm thinking, wow, they got two parents in the home and they have food in the refrigerator and all this other stuff. So I'm thinking, what in the world? My mom's been keeping a secret from me that we're poor. And so when I get home, I'm crying. And I asked my mom, Michael, I said, Mama, why are we poor? And to answer your question, my mom solved that problem, nipped this in the bud very quickly. But and she didn't know what she was doing, but I knew it had to be God's hand on her. And she confirmed that later on after I asked her when I was graduated from college. I said, Mama, why are we poor? And this is what she said, Michael. She put her head down and it looked like I thought it was in shame. She told me later she was praying, but she put her head down. She says, baby, I don't know. It could have been something that I did or didn't do, or something that I should or shouldn't have done. But I tell you this, baby, if you refuse to accept this, you will never be poor again. Because some of us have accepted this. We've accepted this, but you don't have to. Now, you said that you taught school, Michael. Did you catch what my mom did? Now, my mom was a teenage mother, so she's only had to be 28 years old at the time. Did you catch what she did in answering that question? And people say, Joe, what's the big deal? It's the number of personal pronouns she used. Because Mike, you know what she didn't say? She could have said, the reason why we're poor because your dad walked out on us when you were only 2 years old. Joe, we're poor because you're black and you live in Liberty City. Joe, you're poor because they won't give me a raise on my job and no one can expect to live off this salary. Joe, it's the government. It's the white man. It's whatever. She could have used any rationalization to explain why we were poor, and she didn't. And because she didn't, she never gave me a reason to use an excuse for our economic condition. And so from that day forward, I just believed that then I had a choice. I didn't have to be in this community. I didn't have to live this way. And so from that point forward, I decided to accept responsibility for the choices I was going to make. And to the point now, Michael, that this is so ingrained in me. And now I'm 50 years old that I have a vanity car tag, which I know a lot of people don't like, but on the back of my car tag, it says no excuse on the back of my car tag. And which either makes you a person who steps up, accept responsibility, or you're stupid for putting no excuse in the back of your car tag. Because every time I get pulled over by a cop, they start laughing because they can't wait to hear what excuse I'm going to use and why I was speeding, right? And of course, you know what I do when they pull me over? So tell me, why are you going so fast? I say, write the ticket, man.
I had
no excuse, write the ticket.
I had an experience with Broward County Sheriff. I was driving really fast and zipping in and out all over the place. And the sheriff's office really is involved with state crime. They're not like traffic cops. But I must have been going pretty good at it for one of the deputies to pull me over. I was also concerned at the time about my daughter because my daughter had just gotten a very bad blood report from the pediatrician. She must have been 2, 3. And there was a talk that there may be some liver stuff going on. I wanted to get home. So I was driving like a freaking maniac. And he pulled me over and I rolled down the window and I looked at him in the face and I said, "Officer, thank you so much for stopping me. I didn't realize how fast I was going." And this guy looked at me like,
what?
He said nothing. I broke his program. You know what I mean? I just, he had, so I said, "I guess people don't tell you that much." And he said, "No." He said, what's going on?" I told him, "Nothing major. My daughter's just not feeling great. I wanted to get home." So he said, "Look, buddy, drive carefully, slow it up. Have a good day."
But you know, Michael, when I was asked my mom, I said, when I graduated from college, I had graduated top of my class early. I was voted student of the year on my campus. So I had turned my life around coming out of the hood. And I remember asking my mom about that day at Thomas Jefferson. I said, Mama, I said, I want to thank you for telling me that when I asked you that question about why were we poor. And I said, but I want to ask you, I said, you were only what, 28 years old? What made you tell me that? I said, because it changed my life. And she told me, she said, baby, I didn't know what I was saying. I said, what do you mean you don't know what you were saying? She says, Joe, I thought it was funny that you didn't know that we were poor. I'm thinking, how could he be 12 and not know we're not that we're poor? And she said, but when you asked that question, I realized you were serious. And I put my head down and I prayed. I thought because it was shame. She said, I prayed and I asked God, I said, God, this boy is serious. What do you want me to tell him? What do I say to him? And she said that God spoke to her heart and told her, accept responsibility. Don't make an excuse. And my mom said, Joe, why is that such a big deal? I didn't even know why I did it. I said, Mama, I understand now why God spoke to you to tell me that. I said, because if you would have used one excuse that day on me as a 12-year-old young black male growing up in Liberty City, I would have used that excuse for the rest of my life, for mediocrity, for failure, for irresponsibility. I said, Mom, it changed my life. That's why it's my car tag, because I tell people I put it on my car tag, not for other people, but for me to hold me accountable, to understand that I may not control what you do to me, but I can always control how I respond to it.
Sure, sure. It's crazy because people think that they have free will. I don't believe that there is really much free will. The only free will you really have is who you're going to be hanging out with, And well, that's 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 your free will. Who are you going to buddy up with? Who's going to be your mate for life? Who's those are the kind of choices who you're going to be with. But I think otherwise. I think things they don't happen to happen. I don't think anything really happens to happen. But I think that the people don't have really a lot of control in their lives, but this is one thing they can control, and most people really don't. Um, that's why uh, I I was always very picky with friends, and I can pretty honestly tell you that I really don't have many friends because to me, my definition of a friend was something um, greater than just some person to be with to go ahead and watch a movie. It's my favorite friends are the ones that tell me when I'm right, tell me when I'm wrong, try to help me out, don't let me get into trouble. So those are the kinds of people I tended to hang out with growing up because I had the proclivity to being in trouble. Um, in my household, we were lower middle class. We did have food, we did have all of those things. Um, but I was raised in a house where one of my grandparents was a criminal, semi heavy duty criminal. Um, Used to pay hitmen at it's a Rahway State Prison. Used to go visit some people. I mean, some pretty intense stuff. So I don't know if that was part of it, but I had strong friends who kind of led me into the right way because I could have easily fallen into the wrong stuff. I think my gift from God was that I was able to play saxophone pretty well. And that just brought me into a whole different area, a whole different mindset, and a whole different way of being. And so I thank God for that. I thank God for everything, But
We were talking about the angels. I think about some of my quote, and I put it in air quotes, friends, because I didn't have a lot of those friends like that. But I did have friends who were shady characters, who were making a lot of bad choices, who are probably now dead or in prison. But even they had their angel moments with me when I would, because I was a pretty decent kid. I mean, I was very respectful, never got in trouble, that kind of thing. But you saw what other kids were doing. You thinking, wow, I want to hang out with them because they're having fun. I had friends who, even as bad as they were, had enough sense to say, no, Joe, you don't want to go with us here. No, Joe, you stay behind.
mhm.
No, Joe, we don't want you coming up here. No, you don't do this. And I would get mad at them because they wouldn't let me hang out with them. And I didn't realize now that even they had a moment to say, as bad as I'm acting and the bad things I'm doing, I'm talking about they're committing crimes, they're carjacking people, they're robbing people, but they're saying, no, Joe,
Not
this
for
isn't
you.
for you.
Not for
This
you.
is not for you. And now I can look back now and thinking, I used to get mad at them, man. I used to cuss them out. And now I realize, wait a minute, they saved my freaking life, but keep me out of trouble. So they made sure that I made it out. So it goes back to your original question that no one, I had to get out and made it out because I knew that those streets were gonna get me if I didn't get out of there.
Sure. It was you were the streets. So,
Yeah,
well, luckily you made the right choice because, like you said, you never know where you would have wound up. You know,
yeah.
had things been a lot different than they wound up being. How long you married?
I'm on my second marriage, and that's part of even my story with Real Men Connect, an organization that we built. It was Real Men Connect was birthed out of pain and out of hindsight to say, wow, how did I screw up my life so bad? And God, what do you want me to do with it now? I was married for 16 years to one of my, I wouldn't say my high school sweetheart because I was a freshman and she was in high school, but I was her high school sweetheart. We had known each other for 20 years, married for 16 years, and I ruined that marriage. But I'm currently married now, and we just celebrated our 7-year anniversary yesterday. And so, but that first marriage and how I devastated that marriage is part of the inspiration that led me to starting Real Men Connect.
What happened?
Well, I told you where I grew up and how I grew up. No male in the household, and typically you're going to go either way. When you're a boy like that, growing up without a man in your home, a father figure in your home, you tend to harbor a lot of anger, and it's going to be expressed in several ways. Usually, it's expressed in violence towards other people. They can end up putting you in jail or getting you killed. And a lot of my friends, that's how they express it that way. But another way is to suppress it, in which you say to yourself and deny, I'm not, it's okay. I'm not that in bad of a shape. And you decide that I'm going to now compensate for this by trying to overachieve in other areas. And so my remedy for dealing with my father wound, because my dad left it too. And there was one man who briefly came into my life when I was 12 years old, and who was the first man to ever tell me that he loved me. He sexually abused me as a child for 3 years. And so I didn't tell a soul, didn't tell a soul. And so my remedy was not to go out there and rob and steal and kill and destroy stuff. My thing was, okay, I'm not going to trust men. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have so much success that men will have to respect me. So I overcompensated with education, getting my doctorate degree before I was 30 years old. I did it with compensation, making over $250,000 when I was in my 20s. I did it with occupation. I worked for the Florida governor's office as a communication director when I was 26 years old, started my first business at 22, and the list goes on and on. Now I'm leading up to how my marriage ended. So now I don't need a dad. I don't need a man. I've made it. Now I'm successful. No one's ever going to know about the past that I overcame and what I came out of. They don't have to know about my shame. Well, I get married at 22 years old, and I take all this baggage into that marriage. And even though I was, quote, a good guy, what I didn't have a clue on is how to be a husband, how to be a father, because now I had a kid too. And as you know, Michael, that I don't care how the media paints the picture of marriage being running through a pasture with a ribbon in your hand and there's rainbows and unicorns. There's going to be disagreement. There's going to be things that you need to be able to handle as a man. And I was ill-equipped. And I did not tell her about my past. I didn't tell her about the abuse. I didn't tell her about the abandonment issues. And when I couldn't deal with the stress of marriage, I imploded on her. When I say imploded on her, now some men, they lash out in violence. I didn't do that. What I lashed out in is running to other women to validate my masculinity. Because remember, my masculinity, quote and unquote, was taken from me. And now I'm overcompensating to show that I'm a man. So I thought as many women as you can sleep with. And Michael, it got so bad that I tell people, if they've heard a Wilt Chamberlain story, I say, I'm
Uh-huh.
not Wilt Chamberlain, but I could have been his apprentice.
I understand.
I was with, when your ex-wife when you're trying to save the marriage and your ex-wife asks you how many, and you tell her to stop counting after 150, something's wrong. And so obviously it took a lot for her to try to overcome that, and she couldn't. She didn't want to try to rebuild the trust after that. She saved herself for me for marriage. And then I just shattered her heart in a million pieces. And so I had no idea how to be a man. So I lost everything. I lost my wealth. I lost my, quote, secure career. I destroyed my family. I lost my marriage. And by the grace of God, I didn't lose my health. I'm shocked to this day that I did not contract some type of sexual disease, because not all the sex I had was protected. And so I thought my life was over. And so that's what ruined the marriage. And then in the pit of me being down, I'm crying out to God, said, God, okay, you win. I can't do this. I have no idea how to be a man. And I'm afraid to ask anybody, but now I'm ready. I need help. And he sent it to me in just a miraculous way, with a young man who I met when I was lecturing on a college campus, who introduced me to his dad. And I'm giving you the short end of the version of the story, but it changed my life. And that man came to my life and showed me how to be a real man. And now it launched me into now being able to provide that for other men who were like me, even if they're older now, who says, I have no idea how to be a husband, how to be a father, how to spiritually lead my home, how to be a man of integrity, how to be a man of character, how to put my family in right order and not be this man who has to have a huge bank account to feel good about himself. And so that is the short of it, of what happened to me and how it led me to Real Men Connect.
You've mentioned, and I think I have also, about taking responsibility. Are there any like pillars of masculinity, or not of being a man, that you could that are pretty simple ideas and constructs to discuss? Because I agree with you thoroughly. Um, you said it more eloquently than I will now, but basically, you can be 35 years old and you're just a boy living inside of a man's body, and you have no
That's what I
conception of
was.
anything like that.
That's exactly what I was. That's exactly what I was. And from the outside looking in, oh, this is, and I mean, and people looked up to me, Michael. That's the crazy thing, is that they admired and respected me. But I tell men now, I say, you know how I measure man? I don't measure man by the size of his bank account or his net worth. I measure man by the smile on his wife's face when he walks into the room. Because it's because they know you when you're not at your best. And if you want to impress me as a man, don't show me all your achievements. Show me your family. I want to know, do they look at you with admiration, or do they look at you like with this in disgust? And so, yeah, you're right. That's what I was. I was in my mid to late 30s. And here I was thinking, how did I get here? How did I have all this quote success, but I'm a failure? How did that happen? How did I become a successful male, but a failure as a man? And that's what I knew I needed help with. But you're getting
Nice.
ready to ask me a question now.
No, no, it's this line of thought is interesting to me, because I know I've been in crowds where there's maybe hundreds of people, and I'm in there with the crowd, and yet I feel like I'm alone.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've been into houses that were really beautiful and gorgeous, but they're not homes. I
Mm-hmm.
know that I
Mm-hmm.
know that
Mm-hmm.
I've made a good deal of money maybe 20 years ago, yet I felt poor.
Right.
So there's what's it's always like it's so what's the piece? What's the thing that's missing? And for me, the thing that was missing was an internal feeling. The best I could say it from my perspective would be light. There was light missing. I needed to get some
Mm-hmm.
type of light, not necessarily a physical light, but a light of purity, some type of intelligence or a force that could help run through me, that would help me actually understand what my surroundings were and how to deal with them and cope with them. Um, Myself, when I was growing up, I was rather independent. I started working as a musician away from home when I was 14. So the whole idea of cooking by myself, doing my own clothing, making my own bed, all that stuff was easy. It was easy. And I remember when I was dating, I was peculiar in that I would go out with someone. If I felt, in the Italian word for disagita, something in your stomach that doesn't feel good, the second I would feel agita with any woman I was with, that was the last date. That was the last date. If I didn't feel good about something, I was done. And I finally met a woman that didn't give me agita, upset stomach,
Mm-hmm.
gas, however you want to look at it. And uh, I would try to pin her. I'd say, how come you didn't show up? You said you're going to be here at 2 o'clock. She said, don't you remember yesterday I told you that I couldn't make it at 2? It would have to be at 4. Oh. And I kept on doing that for a while, realizing that this woman is true to her word. She's not into playing games. She really does want a good relationship, and I wound up marrying her. And I told her when we married, I said, "There's one thing I will never do, never, ever, ever to you." I said, "I will never break a trust with you, never." I said, "If I'm unhappy with you sexually and I want to fool around, I'm going to tell you."
Mm-hmm.
Said, because if I do that, then and I have, he said 150. That's pretty good. if I if I start to go out and I'm messing around with someone, you're not going to hear it from anyone else. No one else going to tell you. I'm going to be the one to tell you, because at that point, if you wanted to get divorced, I could understand it. But I've never broken trust. If you want to then get back together, there's an absolute and total roadway to do it, because that trust just has not been broken. And I've been married. I'm going on next month will be 37 years.
Wow. Wow.
Thir-
Congratulations.
Thank you. So it'll be 37 years. I've only had one wife, and she just went out to hang out with some of her friends while I go ahead and do my broadcasts. Um, and so I feel really, really blessed in that way. I really do. I really do. But there was a spiritual component that came into my life, which I think really, really helped. And obviously, I noticed when I go to your website, you pretty much you're preaching. I didn't listen. I'm looking at the video of you because I have your website up. Connection, community, and coaching for men that want to win at what matters most. That's a really
Right.
important statement. Is your group, though? Would you say is it Christian based, so that people who are not who don't believe in Jesus, can they be helped by you too?
Yeah, our the people who we attract obviously are Christian men because
Oh, sure.
I'm faith based. But as far as no, I mean, I don't care who they are. If they're looking to, because I think every man needs connection, community, and coaching. Every man needs that because he needs to, because the way we were built to be relational human beings. And so if any man is attractive, he's a non-Christian, great, but he's going to always, I call it, he's going to get a Christian perspective. And if he's okay with it, I'm okay with it. And so even when I'm being, if I'm looking for somebody to mentor me in business, if they're a Muslim, I don't have a problem with them. I'm looking at it from, I need the business advice that he has, but I know it
Sure.
comes from a Muslim perspective. But for me, no, it doesn't matter. It's all on him. I would never turn anybody away. But they know I don't have a hidden agenda. I have a Christian agenda, which is I father filter what I do. And that has got me to where I am now. At least I call it my story. Mike, the way I summarize my story, I say I went from rags to riches to ruin to redemption. And so this is the redemption piece of my story. And it was my faith that got me to redemption.
That's awesome. Want to watch a video with me? I have a video I would really like your opinion on.
Sure.
No.
Technically, you are considered a man when you reach a certain age, when your body begins to show certain characteristics of elevated testosterone. That includes increased facial hair, deepening of the voice, and increased muscle mass. However, these are all the surface level cues. What does it truly mean to be a man beyond outside form? It's a question that has intrigued me as a young man trying to find his way in this world. When I look at modern society, I am horrified to find that many so-called men are simply boys playing at being men. The way they carry themselves betrays them. The way they treat others betrays them. And most detrimentally, their lack of responsibility exposes them. So why do we have a society in which a large deal of men resemble many of my childhood chums? It could be due to a lack of fathers or father figures in many households. It could be due to fathers that have failed them by failing to teach the maintenance of being a man. It also could be due to the changing world in which we're living in, where feminist ideals have left many men emasculated and afraid to express and carry themselves like men. It could be many things, but I do not have the answer for this. So how does an authentic man carry himself, you might be asking? It is in my opinion that there are three main tenets one will have to understand on his path from boyhood to manhood. The first being accepting responsibility for your actions and situation in life. You see, kids make excuses. They cry when things don't go their way. As a man, no one gives a fuck about if things go your way. It's up to you to change your situations.
No
If you're not happy
excuses.
with them, no one is here to spoon feed you. No one is here to piggyback you through life. You must learn to be accountable for your actions and their consequences. Only then will you be able to shape your destiny. Being accountable means not blaming others for your failures. Being accountable means understanding that you are in your situation because of the choices you made and not because of anyone else. Simply the choices you made. Certain aspects of life you're not in control of, but you're always in control of your reactions to the stimulus of life. And your consequences are your choices. There have been people in similar situations such as you that have still managed to do well for themselves, that have still managed to go against adversity and get the upper hand. So who are you blaming? Take responsibility and do what you need to do to get where you need to go. What are the things that you will not accept? Is it people disrespecting you? Or dating girls purely because you find them visually pleasing? You need to have boundaries and things that you would stand for, things that you value most in life. Malcolm X once said, I quote, "A man who stands for nothing will fall for anything," end quote. Don't let other people walk all over you. Have set boundaries. One of the worst things that you can do is become a blank slate. That is someone who has no values of their own, no beliefs of their own, that just goes with the crowd. This is pathetic. As a man, you should stand for something. You should be the embodiment of your values. What is it that you value the most? What is it that you won't accept? These are questions you always ask yourself and things that you take very seriously. So ask yourself right now, what are your boundaries? What are your values? What makes you different from the next guy across the street? You should have something different because your path is different than his. Your path is different than everyone else's. You should have your own individual path, because if you're someone who doesn't have values, who doesn't have boundaries, it's going to be awfully easy for you to be dragged around in society's machine, in society's rat race. You're going to live your life doing work for other men that have a mission for you if you don't have a mission for yourself. And you're going to die with regret, having known that you didn't accomplish the things that you wanted to accomplish because you never took them too seriously. You are a blank slate and you paid the ultimate price for it, wasting your life. Okay, and the third thing is having a mission in life. The ultimate goal is to die having accomplished that which you wanted to accomplish. To die well is having improved humanity with your existence, and not to have simply lived to eat, shit, piss, and sleep. Although it may be difficult to figure out what your mission is in life, it is the ultimate goal. Your mission is your final frontier. Now, I'm not here to tell you what your mission should be. That's up to you. It could simply be to work hard to ensure your family lives well. It could be to develop a cure for cancer, perhaps to become the best boxer in Switzerland. The point is, you need to channel your masculine energy to a goal of your choosing. You need a mission. So those are my 3 pillars for manhood. Of course, I will elaborate on these in further videos, and I'm sure there are more, but for now, that's what I have. Please comment.
So what do you think?
It's typical what I hear a lot of, at least mainstream, a lot of quote experts talk about, man, because he's right, but there's some components that are missing. But he's right on all those counts: accept responsibility, stand for something, have a mission in life. But the reason why we're here, and I say here, in the condition we're in, where we see all 2 out of 3 boys are growing up in the African American and Latino community without fathers in the home. 1 out of 3 in America with white, black, and all of them combined growing up with fathers in the home, is because there's some other components that are missing when it comes to manhood. So I applaud him on that video, but even he's missing some of it as well.
What parts do you think are missing? Is there anything that's really intense that's missing?
Well, I'll share with you, and you'll see why it will make sense. And I have to say, I'm plagiarizing because my thing is, think about this. Let's look from a common sense standpoint, Michael. If I want to be a man, you want to be a man. Wouldn't it behoove us to study, okay, who was the best man as a measuring stick? Are you following me on this?
Yes, I am.
That's called the role model. So obviously, if you want to be a man, you say, where can I find the best role model? Well, I've read Malcolm X. I've read about Martin Luther King. I've read about other great men, but guess who I haven't found who's a better man? The best man I've come across is Jesus Christ. And no man compares to him, to me. Regardless of your religious belief, nobody's thinking he was a myth. They believe he walked this planet. Even Gandhi walked this planet, but he wasn't good as Jesus. And so my thing is, okay, whether I believe in Christianity or not, I'm going to study the perfect man, the man without sin, this man who people now started such a movement that even the people who don't believe him kind of say, I got to respect him. That's the kind of man I want to be, because not everybody's going to approve and agree with you. So let's look at his life. And basically, and I'm going to reiterate something he said, but I'm going to tell you the part that's missing. Now, he started with the first one, accept responsibility. I agree with that. Now, the way I look at it is that what is accepting responsibility? Is it just taking responsibility for your choices like my mom did? Did that make her a good man? No, what a real man does, he takes responsibility by leading his family. Follow me, family. Let me lead by example. I'm going to let you up. That's taking responsibility. I'm not going to let the government do it. I'm not going to let Michael do it. I'm not going to let the school system do it. I'm going to take responsibility for leading my family. So he leads his family. Jesus led his family spiritually. This is what Joe, he wasn't married, but Jesus had relationships, which he did life with, men he did life with, and he led them spiritually. And that means if you're going to accept responsibility, that means you're rejecting passivity. Now, here's the second thing. And he's talking about standing up for something. I wouldn't call it standing up for something, which I do believe. That to me, that doesn't really make you a man. But I look at Jesus, because Jesus stood for something, but that's not what we remember Jesus for. Jesus also loved and served others sacrificially. To me, you want to know a real man, Michael? It's a person who says, it's not about me. Me laying my life down for you. Me being willing to say, what can I do for you? It's loving you when you're the least lovable. It's serving you sacrificially. Did Jesus do that for us? Well, in our faith, he laid down his life for us. So to me, that's accepting responsibility. So he not only does he lead his family spiritually, he loves and serves others sacrificially. Now, this goes into what he's saying about standing up. I think a real man does stand up for something, but it goes deeper than that. To me, a real man like Jesus did, he leaves an eternal legacy. See, Michael, you can take a stand today and we forget about you tomorrow. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Because depends on what you stood up for.
Mm-hmm.
You stood up because you believed in something. That's great. But if you want to be a real man, guess what? Not only will you stand up for something, but guess what? They're going to be talking about you generations from now.
Mm-hmm.
See, I'm living a life in a way, Michael, that when I leave a legacy, I'm not going to meet my great grandkids. But if I live right and I live faithfully by leading my family, loving and serving others sacrificially, I'm going to leave a legacy that they'll still say, wow, I never met my great grandfather, Joe Martin, but man, he seemed like an incredible man. Now, I would say Martin Luther King did that. But Jesus definitely did it because we were feeling the ripples effects even today. But here's the key part that I think reason why we're in the position we're in today. And very rarely do I hear men bring this part up. But when I do, Michael, you're going to say, Joe, duh, that makes perfect sense. A real man not only leads his family, loves and serves others sacrificially, leaves an eternal legacy. Wait for it, Michael. He teaches other men how to do the same. See, you can do all that stuff that man said, but if you didn't teach it to your son, what difference does it make? That's what Jesus did. He called it making disciples. That's where we go back to the coaching part of how you mentor. You have to teach the next generation how to do the same. That's what's lacking in our inner cities because the father's not there. They're not teaching their sons how to be men. So when, you know, I think it was in the beginning that what makes a man, here's my simple, and I could be totally wrong, but this is my simple way of how you know you're a real man. You want to know how you're a real man, Michael? When you're able to teach another boy how to be one. Any questions?
Yeah, no, simple.
If
Very,
you
very
can't
simple.
teach a boy how to be one, you're not one yet.
That's it. That's it. You
And
can't
see,
teach what you don't
nobody
have.
talks about that. Yeah, I don't care about your shaving. I don't care about you getting a license, how much sex you have, how many houses you buy. Can you teach another boy, say, and tell him, follow me, do what you see me do, speak the way you hear me speak, stand up the way you see me stand up. I want to hear him on that video say, now teach the next generation how to do this. That's why we're just talking about the problem, because nobody's teaching other people how to do it.
Sure.
And so
sure.
that, to me, you want to be a real man, step up and teach another boy how to be one.
Well, I assume you've done that with your son. What does your son do? You said you have an adult child now.
Yeah, he's in college right now.
So he's in college. He's studying
And,
anything in particular?
well, you started studying business.
Business.
And
Okay.
a good example would be him, because a lot of parents think that, okay, I've done a great job as a parent if my kids are, quote, successful. Your kids becoming successful doesn't make you a successful parent. There's so many instances of parents who are great parents, their kids in prison. And there's examples of parents like I had who were crazy, who had a lot of issues, and
Sure.
my sister and I made it. And so, but the thing is, the difference is, can you go to that child and say, do you know how to? Did your dad show you? Here's a great example. And I've done this in churches, but I can do this in any arena where I would go to a church and let's say there's 500 men in it. And I say, all men, please stand. And I ask them this question. How many of you stand up if you want to be a successful husband, a successful father, and a leader that your kids and your family respect? They all stand up. 100%, Michael, stand up. And then I ask the women, watch this. Then I ask these same men, remain standing if you had a male in your home who taught you how to do it by his example. Guess what percentage in a church of men are standing up? Less than 10%. Any questions, Michael?
That's pretty crazy. That's just
see that
crazy.
Video doesn't address that. See, the video doesn't address, those are, guess what? Those men are accepting responsibility, but they weren't shown how to do it. So to me, it's not real unless you're passing it on and teaching the next generation. See, my son, if you go to my son, he can end up in prison. But when he's behind those bars, ask him, did your dad show you by example? Did he lead you by example? He would say, yes, that's my responsibility. I can't expect the school system to do that. Matter of fact, I don't want them to do it. I want to do it.
Sure.
And so to me, that's the missing component, that we're not teaching other men how to be men. You know why? Because we weren't shown how to be men ourselves.
Okay. And but you in essence you have your own little school going on. If people want to learn more about what you're doing, how would they do it? Is it just a matter of going to the website? What goes on with that?
Yeah, they can just go to our website at realmenconnect.com. That's realmenconnect.com. And we have resources and everything. If they want to keep in contact with me or look at what we're doing in our community. You mentioned about having friends. I have a saying that a man is only as strong as the number of stronger men he has in his life. And hear me on this when I say this, Michael. I don't care how well adjusted a man is or how good he tells me he is. When I ask him, how many men in your life do you have who you love unconditionally, they love you unconditionally, and at your worst, they'll love you the best. And when you deserve it the least, they'll love you the most. And to me, the number of men he has in life, to me, tells me how strong that man is. I don't care how good a man he is. He's only as strong as the number of stronger men that he has.
No,
And
but
if
that
you
may
don't
start to
believe
work
it-
out then, because I
But, you know,
couldn't name to you a hell of a lot, you know. My father,
and
obviously.
let me put it in practical reality for you. If you've ever worked out, you mentioned work out, but let's say you're in the gym. You could always outbench me, Michael, if you have more spotters. Doesn't matter how strong I am. See, Michael, this is what I'm talking about by having how strong you are. So you've been married for 37 years, and that's great because you've done a great job. Most men haven't been married for 37 years. But here's what most men can't say. If you decide that you were going to break a trust because you said you'll never do it, but guess what? You are human, and believe it or not, you're capable, Michael.
Oh, sure.
You're capable. See, I don't want men to think that because they messed up, they've blown it. No, Michael ain't Superman. Ask his wife. He's capable. He just hasn't done it yet. But here's the thing. If you thought about doing it, I want to know how many men would show up on your lawn to stop you from doing it. That tells me how strong that man is. Because I'm telling you, if I wanted to divorce my wife, there'd be at least just in my city alone, about 30 guys who show up on my lawn to make sure that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's manhood. Man cannot be a man by himself. He needs help. You're only as strong as the number of men you have in your life. And no good man can become a great man without the help of better men in his life.
Welcome to the Michael Blum Show, where we talk about things you don't want to talk about. We talk about sex. We talk about politics. We talk spirituality and substance abuse. Join us by calling 800-699-0980. Think, speak, and be heard. Here now is Michael Blum. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Michael Blum Show. It is Tuesday evening. Sometimes we like to call the show, rather than the Michael Blum Show, maybe a Tuesday night with Mikey. If you like that, you can let me know. We have a great show set up for you tonight. I'm going to get into it pretty quickly, but I need to do the paperwork, as always, beforehand. So I just wanted to let you know, if you want to listen to this show, you can go ahead and do that a whole bunch of different ways. One way is to go to my website, shockingly enough, called michaelblumshow.com, and you'll see a tab there for like a listen now tab, and you can choose your stream. We usually stream in a few places at once, so you can hear the broadcast through Facebook, you can hear the broadcast through Twitter, Periscope, and YouTube, and then later on it'll be on Vimeo and all sorts of other RSS feeds and things like that. So anyway, it is a call-in show. If you'd like to talk to us tonight, and any night actually, the phone number here is 800-699-0980, 800-699-0980, and we'll be very, very happy to take your call. A lot of people don't know, but the show originally started out as a show called Recovery Nation, and Recovery Nation dealt specifically with alcoholism for the most part, occasional narcotics as well. And eventually we started to pan out, and we started to do other types of shows, and always keeping in mind that try to do shows that most people really don't want to talk about, because it's always been in my mind's eye that the things that you really don't want to talk about are probably the things you ought to be talking about. So keeping in that vein, we started to expand what we did, and we include other types of addictions in that. And one of the addictions we included in that was sex addiction, as well as still helping people out as much as we could with the other addictive problems. I have some information about that. Unfortunately, I do have a family member who has an addictive problem. She is an alcoholic. So I have some experience with that. I also have managed a halfway house for a couple of years, so I have some experience with that. But I don't have a lot of experience with sex addiction. I have a lot of experience with sex, and in my show in the past, I've had co-hosts that have been sexologists, PhDs in that subject. I guess they really liked sex, so there they are. But tonight we're going to be talking more specifically about sex addiction, and there's a lot of myths and things out there about it. Well, first of all, is there really such a thing as sex addiction? Now, I know that in the DSM-5, which is a diagnostic manual that's used by most psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, and people who do that, there is really no such term that's specifically called sex addiction. So there are people who believe, it's just, isn't it really just that you want to have a lot of sex? I mean, isn't that really what it's about? Also, a lot of people say, well, it's just being a guy. Men want sex. So men are are prone to sex addiction just because of their gender. There are people who think once you get into this, there's no way to come out of it. And what I'm going to do at this point is, rather than me go ahead and guess about these things, I'm going to go ahead and have our guest come on, and we'll talk about some of this stuff. Again, if you'd like to join us this evening, again, phone number here is 800-699-0980. That's 800-699-0980. And I'd like to welcome to the show Craig Pera. Now, Craig is a world renowned at transforming the lives of people that have compulsive behaviors. They have self-deprecation problems, and that have some sex and porn addiction. So I want to welcome him to the show because he has success stories from like all over the world. He's made his mark as one of the top coaches for professionals, executives, musicians, personalities, professional athletes, and men in need of fast results and changes for the sake of their sexual relationships. How you doing this evening? Ooh, I cannot hear you. Can you hear me?
Testing. How's that?
There you are. That's a hell of a lot better. Now I can actually hear you.
All right.
All right, so
mute button foiled again.
That's what happens. You know, you got so many goddamn buttons. I'm sitting here in front of a 12-channel mixer and a computer with its own crud, and no matter how smooth you try to make it, sometimes it just doesn't happen. But you know, I did a lot of work in different types of studios, and to be quite honest, they goof up on their stupidity that happens there as well, despite the fact that they have way more equipment and professionals, and I'm running the show here. Again, like I said, sometimes I like to call it Tuesday Night with Mikey. Anyway, I do want to welcome you to the show. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I went through a couple of myths. Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. Let me just up your volume here a little bit too. Okay. I went over some of the myths of sexuality, and I know that a lot of them are not true, and I want to get into that, but I do want to ask you how you got started and what's happened in your life to bring you to where you are now, which is the position of really truly wanting to help people out.
Sure. Yeah. Well, my story started, Michael, in a really dark place. So there are two parts of me. On the outside, if you were looking in 8 years ago, you would have seen a successful executive. I was assistant general counsel for $1 billion company, had a beautiful wife, big house, awesome kids, a little dog. Got fired from that job, took a job out here in California, ran another $1 billion company's compliance department, and 8 months later, I lost that job as well because my compulsive sexual behavior was out of control. So I was leaving work early to get prostitutes. I was lying and cheating on my wife. I was having affairs. I was watching copious amounts of pornography. And that behavior is inconsistent with a high-performance organization. So I hit rock bottom. I got fired from my second job. Tried to kill myself, ended up in an inpatient facility for 3 days, had a really, really significant opportunity to reflect on my life and look back at all the things that I had done wrong, all the mistakes that I have made, and the list was so very, very long. And so, like, you know, what people do, I started getting help. I found a therapist, I found a counselor, and it was very important that I find somebody who was not beholden to the disease-based model of addiction. And there's a reason for that. And because I had tried that before. I had gone to the meetings. I had gone to my therapy. I had talked about being touched as a child. I had talked about the early exposure to pornography. I talked about this inability since I was a child for me to control this part of myself in a healthy way, and it didn't work. And so I wanted to find somebody who was a little bit different, someone who was a little outside the mainstream, just to help broaden my perspective, get me focused on other things.
Now, I want to when you say you didn't want to go to some place where they treat this as a disease entity, am I right to assume that what you mean really is like 12-step kind of programs that have
Yes.
worked for other,
Yeah.
you know, other types of
Yes.
addiction? So this is something
Yes.
completely different.
Well, I think 12 steps, when you look at the data, has limited results for people in alcohol, drugs. So it's not a surprise that the efficacy of its use for treating this intimacy disorder, this disorder involving the complexities of human sexuality and self-esteem and you know, compounded with our natural wiring for variety. And if me, I can speak only for myself and my, you know, thousands of clients all over the world, that model didn't work. You know, surrendering, powerless, turning yourself over to a higher power, that did nothing to provide me with the skill set, the education that I needed to get control over my behavior, create healthy sexuality, which is so fundamental for us as men, for that part of our lives to be healthy. And so I walked down a different path, and I'm very grateful that I did, because that different path brought me to this place that I'm at right now. We can talk about that.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal story. You know, in medicine, it's not really necessary for someone, for instance, to have cancer to treat cancer. If someone who goes through all of that, though, I think does have not an edge in terms of medicine, because it doesn't make you a better doctor if you've had a disease, but certainly in terms of empathy, you kind of know what's going on. And that's pretty much what I sense with you, is that you're the real item because you actually went through it. And again, that's not to besmirch any of the other people. I've had, as a co-host on my show, two women who are both PhDs in sexology. As a matter of fact, I got a video of one of them, and who I used to disagree with quite often. And she probably would have been more of a 12-stepper kind of a person, and she was doing some other stuff that I thought was kind of creepy. And I'm not going to get into it because I promised you I wouldn't. So, but
Well, I don't know what it is, but it's
well,
not,
it had to do with her giving approvals for people that wanted to do transgendered surgeries, and I think that's
Oh
a whole,
yeah, that I've learned in my business there are certain topics I stay away from, and that's one of them. I'm not qualified to speak on that subject.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think most people are not qualified to speak on that subject, even the ones that claim that they are. But anyway, so that's that. But so the point is, I've had all sorts of sexologists on it, but none of them ever had a background like you did. I mean, they just like sex, I guess.
Yeah, you know, I thought I liked it, but in fact, it was actually something that was destroying me. And one of the advantages that I have in working with clients is that shame barrier instantly drops, because most of the men that I talk to weren't, listen, I was a mess, Michael. I was a disaster. I was going to the adult bookstores. I was picking up prostitutes on the street. I had a list of escorts that I was soliciting, and it was just so bad and so out of control. Clients instantly are disarmed, because we learn as men very, very early that our sexuality is something that we need to keep secret. We're from hiding our porn use, from making sure no one caught us masturbating, which is obviously a prudent thing to do. I'm just saying it becomes a secret, and that toxicity of that secret grows. And being able to say, listen, I know exactly what you're talking about. Let me share with you this story. It really disarms men and makes them very comfortable talking about a subject that's really sensitive and really hard for them to share, how this part of their lives is so out of control.
What story would you? Is there a particular story, or is it a low point story? What kind of story would you give us? An example of the story you might be able you might share.
Well, my use of prostitutes was pretty prolific, and there's a number of them that became my friends. We became buddies. So I would, have my corporate job during the day, where I was one of two people with an office in a 500-person facility. I'm running the compliance department for $1 billion company. and I would take my 3-hour lunches and go downtown and do my thing. And so I started doing drugs with these women. And I started using heroin. I used crystal meth. I used cocaine. I even got into bath salts, which is that horrific, chemical concoction that came from second and third world countries. Very, very dangerous, highly addictive. And there was one day where I left to do what I was doing. And I mean, listen, it's just having sex and then one leaving, calling another one, stealing money from my family's credit card to call another one, and then going back to work, really, really, really messed up and stumbling around work like that scene in Christmas Vacation where Chevy Chase is stuffing, he's dressed as Santa, he's intoxicated. It's a funny scene. And if anybody who's, any of your listeners have seen it, it emotes humor. But I'm a grown man with a father. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I've got leadership responsibilities. And I was stumbling around work, and that's when they asked me to leave that day and said, "Leave your laptop." And that was my last day in the office, and I was a disaster.
Are you married now?
I am still married. I just celebrated my 20th wedding anniversary 3 weeks ago.
Well, same person, right?
Same person. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. I am very, very fortunate, Michael.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. You mentioned that flakka or the bath salts and stuff like that. Yeah, I know in alcoholism, co-addiction is extremely common. I'm just curious. I'm just curious if you found the same thing true in sex addiction.
Not nearly as common as it is with alcohol. When it is connected, you've got a tough case on your hands because obviously there are deeper issues. The majority of my clients are able to maintain that separation between their completely screwed up personal lives and their professional lives. One of the primary reasons people get help is a combination of two things. Number one, they get caught. That's the leader. Number one, they get caught. Number two is they are unable to contain the behavior, meaning it's spilling out. Their performance as a father is being affected. Their performance as a husband obviously is disastrous, but their performance at work. My clients pride themselves on being successful and proud of what they do. And when that starts to suffer, when that bleed over keeps happening over and over again, they've really got no choice but to look in the mirror and realize that this isn't a game anymore, and they need help to get out of the mess that they've created for themselves.
I'm curious because I noticed when I was just reading your biography that you also do some work for people that are self-deprecating. And
well, listen, the behavior, Michael, is always the symptom. So here's an interesting observation. I think it's interesting. I have never worked with a client in almost 7 years whose primary problem was sex. Too much of it, too little of it, unhealthy. The behavior, in my experience, is always the symptom. It's the symptom of something deeper. So for my clients who are chronically cheating, they are seeking, they do not feel significant. They feel weak, they feel pathetic, they feel emasculated at home, they're not living up to their potential, and they're getting that puff of significance, if you will, through the prostitutes. And for the men who are watching copious amounts of porn, those guys also really, really feel like crap on the inside, if I can use a technical term.
well, we do that all the time.
They have low self-esteem. They lack personal agency and control over their decisions, and their pornography has become their primary numbing, coping, and escaping strategy in their lives. And of course, that begs the question as to what are you numbing? What are you escaping from, and why coping that way? So that gets into some much deeper issues that are well beyond this notion that we've got an out of control sex maniac who can't control himself. That's not who my clients are.
All right, so it sounds like kind of like they say about that rape basically doesn't have anything to do with sex. It's a matter of control. And it's not surprising to me that there's other underlying issues that cause you to go ahead and become a sex addict, or to go ahead and be so self-deprecating that it becomes injurious to your job and your home life and all of that. It seems kind of crazy.
Right.
Just like with other types of substance abuse, sometimes the therapy, like I have a relative who's an alcoholic, and my wife went to an Al-Anon meeting to figure out how to handle that. So I'm curious if you could tell us what all of this stuff really does to the significant others in these people's lives, and how do you coach them too, or how does that all kind of come together?
I do work with partners, Michael, and we have a program specifically for partners, but the primary person impacted by this behavior is the partner, the wife, the girlfriend, the fiance, and the impact is so profound. And here's kind of it in a nutshell. They go to bed at night. 2 + 2 is 4. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and their husband's sexual energy is directed towards them. And then something happens. They pick up the phone. He goes to bed. They hear a beep. They look, and their entire reality is turned upside down. This is the father of their children. They had no idea that this behavior was going on, and oftentimes it's been going on for years. And they find out that their husband has been having affairs, seeing prostitutes. When he said he was staying at work late, he wasn't. And they just realized that this profound betrayal literally shatters their reality. And those are the folks who are impacted in the biggest way by this behavior, obviously beyond the person himself, because one would think with all this sex it'd be fun, and there's certainly a period of time in my clients' acting out history where it was fun, but when it gets down towards the bottom, when they're spinning, when they're in that downward spiral, there's nothing fun about it. It's actually a really sad, lonely, isolating, pathetic existence. And they really want to get out of it. But the partner's impacted the most.
I have some statistics I just kind of ran across when I was just prepping for the show. It said 80% of women who have a husband or a partner that have been diagnosed with sexual addiction suffer from depression. And a lot of people say, well, gee, at least it's just affecting me. And it's not just affecting you. It's affecting tons of people in your life. And you may not know it, but it is there. I wanted to go to a video. I'm just curious what your opinion is of this when we go ahead and look at it. This is from like confessions of a sex addict. So I'm just curious if you find this to be pretty common or not common, or if you want us to stop, whatever. You could break in at any point in time and we can go ahead.
You got it. Sure. Let's see it.
Right.
I've lied, stolen, and taken advantage of everything to get laid. I'm a sex addict and it's ruining my life.
I'm a sex addict. I fantasize about strangers taking advantage of me in random public places.
Being a sex addict and being in a relationship is a hard combo on the days she doesn't want to have any.
I hate that I'm a sex addict. I feel that I'll never have a real relationship because of it.
I wish guys would stop considering my sex addiction a turn on.
Being a sex addict is not easy. Everyone's always judging. I'm tired of being that creepy guy no one wants to talk to.
I'm addicted to sex, but I'm finding myself needing more and more to have an orgasm.
My sex addiction has changed me as a person. I can't control the urges and find myself distracted by every beautiful woman that I see. I don't gawk, but I can't help to admire their beauty and body.
I'm a sex addict and I don't like being told no. I'm okay until my boyfriend doesn't want me anymore, but then I cry from rejection.
I'm a sex addict and it's annoying because it ruins my relationship with girls, even though I don't cheat.
No one knows that I'm addicted to porn and I was diagnosed as a sex addict. I pretty much hide porn anywhere I can. I feel like I'm a prisoner in my own body.
Been a month without sex and I'm literally shaking, feeling withdrawals and struggling to keep moving forward.
I live in fear of commitment because of my sex addiction. I don't want to hurt anyone.
I masturbate too much. Every day, multiple times a day, sometimes in public or at the bathroom at work. I'm literally addicted to sex in all forms.
I am a diagnosed sex addict. Most people feel like it's not a big deal or a real condition. If only people could understand the hell it causes in my life.
Yeah, I mean, Michael, these people are broken. When you think the women who are sleeping with multiple partners are endangering their physical health, they're certainly endangering their sexual health. And some of them initially approach this through their sexual liberation, and they're free, and you can have as much casual sex as you want. And God bless the people who do whatever they do. I'm not here to judge. But there does come a point in time for people, a lot of people, just U.S. News and World Report suggests that 9 million people in the United States are struggling with this condition because your sexual being, that part of you is such an integral part of who we are. It's how we create life. Absent drugs, one of the most significant ways to experience pleasure. And it's wired into who we are. So a sexual problem is a mental problem, is a physical problem, and is a spiritual problem. Whatever spirituality you want to attach to it, but it reflects every aspect of who the person is. They're pathological liars. They know they have this secret, and that secret makes them feel weak, empathetic, because they know that they can't control this part of themselves. This part of themselves should be for pleasure and joy and fun and excitement, and instead it is rooted and steeped in shame, soaking in that shame tea for days and months and years on end, and it impacts every area of their life. So just about everything in that video is could have been a client of mine. I don't work with women just because that's not my thing. I work with guys, and I've had a couple of instances where women clients just had trouble with boundaries. So I stick it to only men now. But I connect with that very deeply. That was, pretty fair representation, minus the dramatic background music that I hear from my clients on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that that's kind of common, because I thought it might be, but I wanted to talk to an expert about it, and I think you gave a low estimate. Again, I have this stat sheet in front of me. It says that the estimated, it's quite an estimate, from 12 to 30 million. How'd you like that for a big?
Only 12 to 30.
That's it, 12 to 30 million. That's
one of the things I've learned, Michael, in this space is be very skeptical of data. It's not the Census Bureau doing this research. There's a lot of numbers are depending on what side you're on, because there's an extremely powerful pro-porn, sex positive contingent that wants to dismiss this as an issue at all. Yet here's a statistic that I love. I love statistics that the curator, the person who takes the data, there's no motivation, and so the American Association of Lawyers who handle divorces was surveyed, and a survey covered all sorts of different things, from their professional life to their personal life to their clients. And an interesting piece of data, those lawyers said that porn was a major contributing factor in 47% of the divorces that they handled, and that was in 2008 or 2007. So we're getting close on that 10-year, and I think they do it every 10 years. So we're going to have some new numbers. I can only imagine I had to turn my phone off while we were talking. 2 people called me, but there's just a number of people who were struggling and suffering. So it's very high. And if that statistic gives you any perspective, it's a lot of people.
Do you think that porn is cheating?
Whoo! All right, this is Michael asked the good questions, and it's such.
I get one every now and then.
I love that question, and the answer is it depends. So, for example, there are certain people in my world, certain partners who absolutely see it as cheating. There are other partners who've been cheated on who don't see the porn as cheating. So, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I get that question a lot. I encourage people to dig in, to decide. Is it in fact cheating? It doesn't involve a real person. There's no flesh-to-flesh contact.
Well,
But the simple reality is, is that there are secrets, there are lies. There's a reason that the man in most my world is keeping it secret, and that's energy that he's not bringing to his relationship. So I completely understand how and why a partner can see it as cheating. So it is for a lot of them.
You know, it's crazy because I had a conversation with someone. We were talking about, in today's day and age, things are very different. You can go ahead, for instance, and get some type of thing, a USB supported masturbator, and put that on yourself, and go ahead and on the internet, go ahead and have sex or virtual sex or whatever you want to call it with someone in Paris. And
do you know what they call those devices? Because you're going to love the name, Michael.
I don't know the actual name now.
Teledildonics.
I do love it. Teledildonics. Okay. Yeah. So the question, it was the same question, but it was with that kind of a background, is that, are you now cheating? There's no flesh.
I absolutely think when, and again, I let my clients define that for themselves. And it's at a minimum, let's take it from the guy's perspective. He's like, wait, I'm not cheating. I'm not going to see somebody. Just in strictly the porn sense, what that guy needs to do is understand why his partner feels that way, because she had one expectation and he clearly had a different one because he decided to keep his secret. And they didn't discuss what their sexual norms were and what their expectations were, or more likely, he lied about it. No, I'm not doing it. But when you get into the camming and you've got people and you're talking to some real person, it's a line that it doesn't matter to me. It's hurtful. There's one person in that relationship who was grossly surprised by this revelation, and that person feels betrayed. So call it what you want. But I absolutely think it's a lot harder to defend that case where there's a real person, there's devices hooked up, you listen to someone's real voice, they're talking to you, or camming with you. Yeah, that's cheating, man.
Okay. I agree with you, by the way. I think that it's kind of crazy I think that whole thing is kind of crazy to do that. Dildotronics?
Teledildonics. Now, what's interesting is, a lot of technology comes from positive places. So one of the leading companies in this field started testing their products on military couples.
Okay.
Because, we've got troops stationed all over the world. They're not near their partners, and there is a massive, massive porn problem in the military. I don't go 2 days without getting a call from someone, whether they're in the trenches or whether they're in a leadership position, who has realized that this porn is having a significant impact on their life. And as we talked earlier, it's bleeding over into their career. And so this company was, hey, how do we help these couples who are no longer together? Let's see if we can use technology to enhance that experience. And, obviously it's not going to be used just for that. It's going to be used for camming. It's going to be used for phone sex. It's going to be used for cheating. It's going to be used for all sorts of nefarious activities. But where the technology is going with virtual reality, and I laugh every time I say it, teledildonics, it is increasing that pleasure in making something that was once, for us at least, when we were growing up, right? It was magazines. It was a still image. It was a picture in a bra ad. The catalogs. I used to remember looking through the Sears catalogs. Heck, I remember looking through National Geographic. And now you've got a whole nother level of stimulation that's, I think, doing some serious damage to people.
That's crazy, because I remember in my past, my first experience with pornography and stuff like that is my father used to, from time to time, and this is when I was a young guy. I'm 63 now, so I'm talking about 8, 9, 10 years old. Sometimes he would usher us out of the room, and a whole bunch of the guys from the neighborhood would come in, and the projector would be going, and they were doing some stag movies and showing them and all that.
Yeah,
So
the 8mm.
Well, my father was very fancy. It was a 16 millimeter
Hey.
with him. So it's a little bit, the definition was a little bit better, but of course nothing like what we're doing now. And
Yeah.
it came an opportunity where myself, my brother, and my cousin, who lived one door away from me, my folks were out, and we knew they would be out for hours. And I set up the projector, and I know how to do all that, and I started the porn thing off. And on the old projectors, they had something called a clutch, which was if you wanted to stop the film for a second, you could turn it, and it would kind of freeze. I had the clutch on and didn't realize it. And the bulb started to burn a hole through the film. Okay, so now I'm sitting with my brother and my cousin and myself, and there's like smoke filling the room. And of course, we're trying to do this, and we don't want to get caught, and we don't want anyone to know anything. But finally, we did get it together, and we did watch it. And I remember my heart throbbing out of my chest. I couldn't.
Yeah.
I could not believe the rush. And of course, that rush, when you're single, you get that rush each time it's with a new person in particular. And then hopefully, if you do it right, you get that rush all the time with one particular person, and that's kind of at least your sexual mate. But that was kind of my experience with that. And I can imagine that people who have some real intense issues with their not with their sexuality, as you said, but with things that are going on bad in their life, how this could be an absolute rush. Very, very similar to alcohol or anything else that you'd go ahead and find to be very addictive.
Well, it works. That's the thing is if you want to numb, cope, and escape, if you want to, disappear into a rabbit hole and forget the outside world for a period of time, I'll just speak for myself. You watch porn. Like, I remember watching porn and then realizing 3 hours had passed. Like, what the hell am I doing? Clicking, watching, maybe getting up to grab a bite to eat if I was even doing that, coming back and doing it some more. It releases chemicals in the brain that make you feel wonderful. You're focused on what you're doing. You're not thinking about anything else. It reduces the stress level cortisol in your body at orgasm. Like it works.
It works.
It works too well. It works too well.
Yeah. I want to play another video, and again, you can comment on it, but it's pretty much what we're talking about.
Sexual tastes vary from person to person, but with the current pornography epidemic, as some call it, one has to wonder how exactly this may affect our desires and perception of sexuality. Moreover, how does it affect our sex lives? Pornography constitutes about 25% of all search engine requests and is the fourth most common reason people give for going on the internet. And while it may seem to simply facilitate an instinctual sexual response linked to millions of years of evolution, the truth is, pornography has dynamically changed over time, ultimately molding our tastes and desires. The not-so-shocking truth is that pornography has profound consequences for the brain and acts in many ways like a drug. With prolonged exposure, your tolerance is increased, and many often find themselves addicted. Though it's not a physical substance, it leads to the same general loss of control, the compulsiveness to seek out the activity despite negative consequences, and withdrawal when it goes away, much like that of gambling or running, for example. The issue is that continued exposure can cause long-term or even lifelong neuroplastic change in the brain. Dopamine is released as a reward whenever we accomplish something, whether it be eating to sustain life or sexual activity to produce future life. And this dopamine consolidates neural connections in order to drive us to perform the same activity in the future. In other words, it alters and forms the brain cells to motivate certain actions. It rewires your brain. The National Institutes of Health measure drug addictiveness by testing rats. The rat is trained to press a button in order to get a drug, and the harder it works indicates how addictive the substance is. It turns out that the more addictive a drug is, the more dopamine we see released. And while there is, unfortunately, no rat porn that we can give to them, we do know that dopamine is also released during sexual excitement, which pornography plays right into. The more time you spend doing it, the more dopamine gets released, which reinforces the behavior and makes you not only desire it in the future, but require it. And as you begin to imagine these images away from the computer or while having sex, they become reinforced. Furthermore, each orgasm releases even more dopamine, which consolidates the connections made during the session. It's a feedback loop that becomes harder to escape. And just like a drug, your tolerance for visual stimulation has now compounded, making it more difficult to be turned on by reality. Pornography addiction can often lead to finding your mate less attractive. The good news is, it doesn't have to be permanent. Usually when people understand the mechanism and realize it's affecting their relationships, they can stop. The brain is often described as a use it or lose it system because the neural connections you stimulate grow stronger and desire to be activated, while the ones you ignore become weakened. Much like your muscles, which, if sitting still all day, itch for activity, but after prolonged non-use, they become complacent. Luckily, because of this use it or lose it brain, the same neuroplastic system that proliferates these habits can also be used to acquire healthier ones. Got a burning question you want answered? Ask it in the comments.
So some science there. Same kind of setup as if you were doing drugs or doing anything else that produces those kinds of effects in the brain.
Well, and notice though, it was a smart video, Michael, because it included running. One of the big criticisms of the brain research around addiction is they show here's a brain sitting still, and next to it is a brain where someone's on drug. Look at all the things are lit up. Look, it's the same thing in porn. Well, if they had a third image of someone running, cheering for their favorite football team, worshiping in church, you'd see that same brain being lit up. So from a very practical perspective, just the way I've helped people, I've found the brain science to be a red herring. And the reason for that is just because there are prominent neuroscientists in this issue debating the true impact of this on the brain. Here's the fact of the matter. I'll let them experts, get into the neuroplasticity and the cellular stuff that's happening. But what I do know is that what they talked about in that video of the porn becoming more extreme, more graphic, more away from that person's true sexual center, absolutely. Does it take more of it to accomplish the same job? Absolutely. Does it increase over time left unchecked? Absolutely. So those patterns that were cited in that video are traits that I see all the time and traits that I personally experienced.
Do you see or feel that there's any difference at all between being a sex addict and a porn addict? Is it the same thing?
No, well, the way I define it, Michael, and other people define it differently, sex addiction is when it involves other people. The pornography is not just pixels, but it's pixels only. And the reason for that distinction, I think, is just how it's evolved, because there needs to be a second category for the men who are having sex for, where it no longer becomes pleasurable and they're lying about it and they're having lots of it, or they're engaging in high-risk behavior. I mean, you don't turn on the internet without seeing someone getting arrested for getting sucked into child pornography. I talked to a lot of these guys that they're not pedophiles. They couldn't fathom doing any of those things, but they need something worse and worse and worse and worse. And so those are the primary differences between those two categories.
It's crazy. I once interviewed a rabbi who got caught in that whole thing. He had never used a computer in his life, and someone gave him a computer, say, "Hey, Rabbi, you got to get with it." And he was, running a temple and all of that. And he went to look at something, or he searched something about David, and homosexual images came up. And he got from that, then he went into regular sex, and eventually it became child pornography. And his computer got so screwed up that he couldn't use it. I mean, he would get pop-ups and all sorts of crap. I don't know if you remember when this all started. That's kind of what happened.
Oh, yeah.
And eventually he called in the guy who gave him the computer and said, "Look, I'm having a lot of issues with the computer here. It's not really functioning well." He gave it to the guy. The guy saw all this child porn on it. Rabbi came into the office the next day. FBI was there. They arrested him, took everything out, and he became the porn, child pedophile rabbi. And, he disclaimed everything, and it was kind of a big catharsis for him to go through all of this. But it's amazing how much trouble you can get yourself into if you just allow things to kind of snowball and get out of hand. It's pretty terrible.
It is absolutely terrible. Devastating.
The other thing, I got to tell you, many years ago, I used to like porn. I was not addicted to it, or, well, that I understand. But An hour or two in front of the computer, or would happen maybe once a week, maybe every other week, maybe something like that. But of recent, and when I say that, I mean maybe the last 8 years. That's recent. You know, it's funny. As I get older, I go, well, Tuesday, and I go. I mean, 4 years ago. You know, I mean, a time kind of like gets very messed up. But the porn that I was weaned on, if you will, is from the 70s. And the stuff that I see now isn't a turn on. I mean, to me, it's disgusting to me. And not because of the sex. It's disgusting to me because of how all of the women seem to be portrayed.
Oh, yeah.
The level of sex there's absolutely no compassion or love. I mean, it's kind of become much more brutalized. I mean, the big deal is, you know, that always famous, you know, the money shot at the end, the facial orgasmic shot. And I don't know if you ever try that with too many women, you know, you can get smacked pretty good. You know,
They've done studies, Michael, and 87% of the pornography on your major tube porn sites. Those are the places that, I'm not going to give out the address, but those are the places people go to when you're looking for the free porn. There's about 10 properties on the web that dominate most of the internet traffic. One of those was picked. All the movies were reviewed by people who study this stuff. 87% of those videos depicted physical violence against women, verbal violence against women, or outright sexual violence against women, where the actors were where consent was blurred or completely violated, meaning a rape scene. You're seeing more and more of those. Or there's a exploitation of a power dynamic, if not outright violence. You know, daddy-daughter, mother-son. A lot of the huge increase in the family porn recently. It's the more taboo you can get, the more clicks it's going to get. You can just think about the phenomenon on Facebook. What are the headlines that get clicks? And those are the ones that shock the conscience. I can't believe I saw that. I've got to look. and that's what sucks people in. And the porn industry knows that. So they're getting more and more precise on creating new genres for people, which gets to the use getting more and more hardcore and more graphic over time. But it is, you know, a complete absence of love. I think it's a dirty, filthy industry, and I have no qualms about somebody trying to make money. But I've met porn stars. I've interviewed porn stars. I have a video on my YouTube channel with Jessie Rogers, who was an A-list porn star, top of her game, who talks about being violently assaulted by a leading adult male star off camera. James Dean was an accused, who's a famous male adult porn star. He's the guy who's doing crossover work, meaning he's going mainstream. If you remember, Michael, there was a barrier at one point. Porn was over here, mainstream was over here. The porn industry has tried to promote video game teams, video game conferences, video game competitions. That was rejected, but they're going to keep coming back, and eventually it's going to happen. You've seen actors doing porn cross over into mainstream movies and mainstream television shows. And this, you know, one of the golden boys of the porn industry, James Dean, who has done crossover work, who does have a crossover appeal in mainstream media, was accused by 7 women of violent sexual assault, allegedly. I'm going to put that word in there so he doesn't sue me. Very litigious group of people, by the way. And so that's him. Ron Jeremy, the famous guy with the mustache. Anybody who's watched porn back in the 70s, remember Ron Jeremy? He's been accused of sexual assault. And these are guys who do it for a living, yet they still don't understand consent, boundaries, permission, it being a mutual decision to engage in this activity between two people. And the stars have terrible working conditions. They're not paid on the back end. They pay a flat fee up front. And then those producers are allowed to take those movies and use them in perpetuity, generating income, and none of that money goes to the star, who eventually ends up shooting one scene a day, two scenes a day. And you know, when I met a porn star, I was on a reality show with a porn star, Maddie O'Reilly, and I think she shot 15 hardcore scenes a month. Can you imagine working out every day to the, you know, your full, complete burnout potential? Think of the toll that that takes on their body. And in fact, Jessie Rogers had to have surgery on her bottom area. She had internal bleeding at times. So I mean, this is what we're. So this isn't. And you know, I don't want your listeners to go digging in, but you know, when you peel back that glamorous lifestyle that you see on TV or that may be presented in porn of these stars embracing their sexual freedom, you get a few stars who are making that kind of money. Most of them are making crap. Most of them are burnt out of the business by the time they hit the age 22, and by 25 they're washed up because they're not that 18, 19, 20, the most popular years. And their bodies and minds are destroyed. Everybody, no. But a lot of people, yeah.
What I see also is that particularly in the younger millennial crowd, is that they think this is how it should be. And a lot of the guys want to look like those guys. They want to have like 10-inch penises and all sorts of crazy stuff. And a lot of them do medically inappropriate things to kind of go ahead and try to achieve that. You know,
it's interesting because when you're seeing, well, what are the advertisements on porn sites? I've studied this. It's been really, really interesting. It is appealing to, well, it's other porn, but it is, do you have a small penis? And that, the simple reality is that those monster baseball bats that you see in porn do not reflect most men, and in fact, you talk to most women, that's not something that they'd even enjoy. They're not looking to get a doctor's appointment and get probed by this club, and it's very uncomfortable. But you're right, you're seeing more and more ads targeting young boys and young men. They're expecting that that's what they're supposed to look like, and they think that that is how they are supposed to behave.
You know, it's crazy because
you're supposed to grab the back of the girl's head and shove it down on your penis.
You know,
most women don't like that.
Yeah,
most women don't like that.
No, I don't think most people wouldn't like that, being shoved or pulled or anything like that in particular. I do find sometimes though that the women, again, the younger women and all of that, they kind of have expectations that this is how a guy should be too. So. Now, not that women really are the major focus of pornography. They're usually not watching too much of it, but it is there. So it screws a lot of things up. I was curious also, you mentioned way back when that you don't treat women. Why don't you treat women?
Well, I've got a great program. It works, but there were a couple of instances, Michael, where I found that, you know, again, if the porn is the symptom, right, there are other issues going on, and I got a couple of awkward compliments from a woman client. And so what I decided to do, and it happened like at or around the same time, I just said to myself, well, one is I don't want to carve out a niche for myself where I'm hearing women tell me their sexual fantasies. Now, I'm highly confident I can manage it. I'm a professional. I've been doing it 7 years. And I've worked with couples. I talk about sex all the time. It doesn't rattle me. But I just felt that that was just pushing the envelope, number one. I wanted to protect myself. And number two is I also found some of those women had trouble with boundaries, and it wasn't good for them. So I refer them to a woman that does this work and does it very well, and that's the smart thing to do for me and for them too.
It's crazy because I remember many years ago, if I had an emergency situation, I'm a dentist by trade, by the way, and I needed to. So you can decide whether you want to hate me or not now. I love my dentist. Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad someone loves a dentist. But anyway, what was I talking about? I lost my train of thought. I used to go. Yeah, I used to go in, and if someone called up, I would go into the office, open up the office, treat them, and have a nice day, and that would be it. I stopped doing that if there were women, because unless I had someone with me, I didn't want to get involved with anything. And thank
No,
God.
you want to protect yourself professionally. I think that's
Yeah.
smart, and that's good business practice, because you get the one crazy who sees it as an opportunity to exploit you and say things about you, and all of a sudden, and the good news is the overwhelming majority of people aren't like that, but it only takes one, right? It only
That's
takes
true.
one.
That's true. And
That's that. I think I forgot to mention that. That was the other reason, which is I don't want anyone to ever to say Greg was, I was telling him what I did, and here he was, being aroused, or if I said something inappropriate. So it's not a risk with the guys, and it's just good business practice for me.
yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously women do lie. I mean, today I think somehow you're supposed to, if you're a woman, you say something, you're supposed to accept that as fact, and that's baloney. Go ahead and ask the lacrosse team at Duke. You can go ahead and ask the guys at Virginia Tech. Actually, there were 4 dentists recently. This was in the news out in Nevada, and they were all accused of being of forcing a woman into having sex. And she said it happened.
Oh, I saw that. I saw that. Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think they disproved that because the video did not show what she said. No one entered into that room. So you got to be careful as a therapist, as a dentist, as anybody, I think, in today's day and age, because you never know really what's going on. When I was growing up, and again, my heyday was the 70s, I was kind of chivalrous compared to other people my age. I guess I was raised in a little bit more conservative fashion. And I had that experience of running to open the door and having someone say, because I'm a woman, you think I can't do that myself?
I thought I was just being a gentleman, but what you're saying, Michael, reminds me of a relatively new phenomenon that I had not seen. If you asked me 3 years ago, have you seen blackmail or extortion? And I've had the privilege of working with some high net worth clients, executives at Fortune 1000 companies, professional athletes, professional musicians, TV personalities. 3 years ago, never saw it. 2 years ago, 1 or 2 clients. Now I get calls all the time. Everything from the guy who's calling the escort but hanging up, gets a call a week later and says, hey, MRFer, like you got to pay right now, or I'm going to call your wife because I know who she is. That to outright extortion, which is we have pictures, we know where you were, we photographed your car in the hotel parking lot. We know who your boss is. Organized crime is in on the game. So men who are soliciting prostitutes in states where it's illegal have an added risk of being extorted for their actions. And that risk has increased. Like I said, never heard it 3 years ago. I hear it a lot now.
Yeah, the times they are changing. I don't know if I would call it progressive. maybe more regressive, but times are changing no matter how you look at it. You have to just be aware of that. The other thing I wanted to mention to you is you talked about about expectations when people get married. I had some expectations when I got married, and my background, I've had 3 careers in my life. So some people think that I'm eclectic, and others just think I'm skitzed. And
you and me both, Michael.
So I was a professional musician. That's where I started my life out doing. Then I started to teach in junior high schools in New York City, and I taught special education. So I have a master's degree in education. And then I went and I had a doctorate in dentistry. So anyway, way back when I was a musician, I used to go ahead and I'd spend time, and we had to travel, cruise ships sometimes. It could be clubs up in upstate New York or whatever we were doing. And so I did that a lot. And I knew how to cook. I knew how to take care of myself. I knew how to do clothing. I knew how to do laundry and all of that. And I kind of made it clear when I was going out with my wife that I'm not looking for a homemaid. That's specifically not what I'm looking for, because I don't need that. I'm a decent home cook. I can make something for you, and you will enjoy it. It will be delicious. Yeah. So I don't need that. And I said, what I need is a lifetime companion, and someone who will be able to sexually please me, keep me happy, be with me, and be a true partner in life. And the woman who I married obviously agreed with that. And I told her that, to me, the most important thing in any relationship was trust. And
Yeah.
I said to her, I will never, ever break your trust, ever. I said, if I'm having an issue with you or I feel I need to have sex somewhere else or I'm going to cheat, I'm going to tell you about it. I'm going to tell you I'm going to go out and I'm going to cheat on you. And why? Because I just think you can't undo lack of trust. It may be after the fact, if I did that, that my wife would say, well, go screw yourself. Here's my friend, Mr. Divorce Attorney.
Right.
But I would not have broken that trust. I would not have broken that trust. She would know about it. And if she said, all right, this is a one-time thing, that's fine. The trust is there. She knows I was honest about it. She knows that I did it the way I wanted to do it. And so that's worked for me. I'm married now, 36 years.
Wow. And you're so, I mean, one of the biggest problems that men have is they aren't honest with their partners about this part of themselves. So it's the Madonna whore complex. Well, I can do this over here with the girlfriend, but I can't do that with my wife. And I hear so many times from the wives is, if he created a safe, intimate, loving environment, I would have swung on the chandeliers if he wanted me to. And so many men don't give their partners the chance because they're ashamed of that part of themselves and how they express themselves authentically. There's a phrase that I really, really like, and it's called sexual authenticity. You know, what does it mean to be authentic with that part of your life? And for so many people, that part of themselves is shrouded in shame and secrets and disgust and self-loathing, that they don't even know who they are. They know they know they're this way with this person and they're that way with their wife. And that over time just rots the relationship. I commend you for your honesty. I wish I was that honest with my wife. So much of this would have been avoided if I was open. Instead, I kept secrets. And those secrets grew and grew and grew and grew. I never thought I'd be a guy paying for sex. I never thought I'd be the guy sneaking around and doing this stuff with, friends and like embarrassing my wife and humiliating her and
Sure.
It's honesty is the best policy.
I did have a friend way back when who I believe was a sex addict, now that I think about it. He used to claim he was, but I never really saw it too much. And he was married at the time, and he called me up. He said, hey, you want to go out and do something? I said, sure. And he said, I know this place he mentioned some street in Brooklyn. He says, where there's this, it's a whorehouse. And you can go in there. There's this girl, Denise, and she does an amazing blowjob. And I said, look, Bruce, and I wasn't married. Okay. I said, I have absolutely no desire to do that. I've never had a prostitute. I never had any desire to do that at all. And we were riding around a little bit, and sure enough, all of a sudden he goes, that place I was talking to you about is across the street. And I said, so what? And he said, do you mind if I go over there for a little bit? I said, go ahead and do what you want. And he left me in the car, and he disappeared for about a half an hour and came back. The thing that was the most horrific for me was that when we went back to his house, his wife was there. Oh, hi, Mike. How you doing? What'd you do? Where'd you go? What'd you do? And he took over because I couldn't handle it. That's the last time I ever saw or spoke to that guy. That's how repugnant I found that whole thing to be.
Yeah, it is.
It was just more that I could handle. So anyway, speaking of handling things, if people want to know more about what you do or get in touch with you, websites, books, things like that, I'd like you to tell everybody how they could do all that.
Sure. First, the YouTube channel, The Mindful Habit is the name of my YouTube channel. I have a podcast called Sex Addictions and Porn Afflictions. You can find that on iTunes. And if you want to get to my website, learn a little bit about me, maybe take a quiz to see how you rate and compare to other people in terms of, is this behavior a problem in your life? My website is www.themindfulhabit.com, themindfulhabit.com. And, obviously honored and privileged to help anybody who's reaching out and struggling and not living up to their potential, and see at the root of that problem is their behavior. Well, we'll help you take that even deeper to get to the real root of the problem, but in so doing, help you create healthy in that part of your life. Because so many people, Michael, they focus on, I got to stop doing the thing, I got to stop doing the thing. And that's like, close your eyes, don't picture the pink elephant. All I see is the pink elephant. And you've got to build something, and you've got to create healthy sexuality. And for some of my male clients, 40, 50, 60, and 70 in one case, this is the first time they brought attention in a really structured, disciplined way to that part of their life. But themindfulhabit.com is the website, and they can get in touch with me there and my team.
Excellent. I want to thank you so much for joining us this evening. I had a lot of fun. I hope you did. And
I sure did.
Cool.
Thank you, Michael.
Maybe we can repeat this in the future.
I'd love to. Thank you so much.
Okay, because I have this list here of things I was thinking of talking to you about, and I think I got up to here. So
yeah. There's a lot more to cover, my man. Let's do it.
Yeah, there is a lot more to cover, and sexuality is always interesting and fascinating because it's such an integral part of everyone's life. So I want to thank you again. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Folks, you've been listening to The Michael Blum Show, and I've been yakking here about maybe over an hour or so. I may play one more video. I'm not sure, but let me just see how to treat a sex addict. Well, that's a matter of opinion. Sex versus nymphomania. Now, this is someone's opinion, and then after that, we'll just kind of wrap it up and say goodbye and have a good day. But watch this; I think you'll enjoy it.
Guys,
so,
I'm out here in Anaheim, California. Just got done with a long day, kicking it in the hotel room, but wanted to get a video out to you and answer a question that I got a couple weeks ago, and I've gotten it a few times since actually, and it was, Jace, is sex addiction the same as being a nymphomaniac? And I said, I actually have no idea. I don't really know what that term definition is. I don't really know what that means, so I went and looked. And the short version is that many, many, many years ago, women who had a sex drive were deemed to be mentally ill, and they were then classified as nymphomaniacs. It comes from a Greek term. There's actually a matching male term that we never hear because there's nothing wrong with you if you're a man and you have a sex drive. So I think the real difference is willpower. Nymphomania is classified by basically having a really high libido, really high sex drive, and that's just not what's driving sex addiction. I know this is a super weird concept, and I'll go into it more later, but sex addiction isn't driven by sex at all. It has very little to do with sex. Both can be compulsive, I would imagine. You get into addiction when it's something you don't want to be doing, you try to stop, you just can't. You hate it, there's so much more that goes into it. It's not somebody out there who just really loves sex. It just has like a ton of sex. Like somebody else was asking me, how much sex do you have to have before you become a sex addict? It doesn't work that way. How many drinks do you have to have before you're an alcoholic? No, it doesn't work that way, guys. But yeah, really, at the end of the day, a nymphomaniac is, that's a really derogatory term because it tells a woman that having a sex drive is abnormal. Can't think of too many women who want that label, and guys, I would think twice before using that term. Do you really want to discourage women from having a sex drive, telling them it's abnormal? Yeah, if you have any concern for people in general, I would stop using that term. It's not a nice term. It tells a woman there's something wrong with her, and that's really not a fair thing to do. So yes, I would advise not using that term anymore. And of course, do a little reading yourself. But that's it for now. I am pool bound, so I will catch you guys next week. Of course, you can see me on the channel here. Hit up my website.
All right, so there you have it, folks. Whether you be a nymphomaniac, which this woman doesn't like the term, or a porn addict or a sex addict, I hope that tonight we did something to help you out. You know, that was the purpose, and that's what we really want to do. So anyway, as I'm used to saying at the end of all my broadcasts, basically, that anything in life is possible, but fewer things are probable. But one thing is certain, and that's that you're alive. So go ahead and live life to its fullest, because tomorrow is promised to nobody. Speak to you next week.